Tonight we will go deep into the realm of the unknown and question everything as we search for the truth. We will explore the possibility of countless phenomena within the ultra spectrum, and together we will learn that it is all connected. This podcast is brought to you by the Experiencers Support Association, and it is a live stream broadcast. If you have a question, send me a super chat or become a YouTube member. This podcast is brought to you by the Experiencers Support Association. Take a seat, relax, get ready, and welcome to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. Today is Thursday, May 12th, 2022, and I, Ryan Stacey, am your host this evening. I'm a licensed private investigator, a citizen journalist, and the Director of Investigations for the Experiencers Support Association. I'm the former National Chief Investigator for MUFON Canada and the former International Field Investigator Trainer for MUFON in general. Welcome to the channel, and thank you for joining us this evening. To super chat, click the $ next to your name inside the comment box. Put your comments and questions in the chat below. Tonight's theme is ET contact and hold on a second here. Tonight's theme, I believe, is psychic medium and hypnotherapy. So we're gonna go with that one. Our guest for season 4, episode 15, is Calypso Castanares. Did I say that right? I can see you. Okay, awesome. So Calypso is a psychic medium and hypnotherapist specializing in past life regression. She is a certified yoga instructor, Reiki master, practicing Celtic, witch, and UFO enthusiast, and Contactee. Calypso lives in the beautiful state of California with her husband of 34 years. Her passion is helping others live the best life they can through a deep spiritual life that involves healing and discovery. Hello, Calypso. Put on your tinfoil hat. How are you doing this evening?
I'm well. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Perfect. Did I say your last name right? Did I say that okay?
Yes, you did. Castanares.
Right. Castanares. Perfect. So as we start the show, the first thing we do is an icebreaker, and CC's provided that icebreaker for us. So I'm just going to play the little jingle for us all here. 1 second. Bring that in. All right, so our icebreaker for today is you turn on the TV/news to see the headline, UFO invasion. What is your first thought? Oh, that's a good one.
I knew it was coming.
Okay, that's interesting. I'd be like, fake news is what I would say.
Yeah, well, I would be a little skeptical for sure.
Yeah.
And invasion, I wouldn't be afraid. That's a little bit much to choose that word. I fall into the category of welcome.
Well, yeah, I would eventually welcome it, but I more than likely would be like, okay, fake news, but then turn the volume up, sit down, and listen. So it's not like I would just say fake news and walk away and ignore it. I'd be just like, bullshit. Hold on a second.
I would probably be running in circles like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it would affect all of us in many different ways. Different ways. For those of you in the comments, put your thoughts and answer the icebreaker tonight and let us know. So, Calypso, I asked everyone this question is the best way to start, and that simply is, why are you the way that you are? And what I mean by that is, how did someone like you get here sitting in this chair today? So bring me back as far back as you want from when it started and walk me through, your life that just turned you into, the person that you are today.
Well, it really wasn't that long ago. It probably started a little bit, the psychic medium skills gift started in my Catholic years, and that was less than 5 years ago, about four years ago, maybe 4.5. I was a very devout Catholic. I was not a devout Catholic all my life. I was not raised Catholic. I grew up in a Christian home, but not like, very strict. My mom we all followed the golden rule and believed in a higher power, God, Jesus, Christian. And later in life, I converted to Catholicism, and that was like turning to the dark side, if you will, coming from the religion that I grew up in, which was just mainstream religion. But then I got into Seventh-day Adventist church and became a member. So when I moved from Seventh-day Adventist religion into Catholicism, that was like going to the dark side, because a lot of the theology of the Seventh-day Adventist churches, and this is also the case with many religions, is that the Roman Catholic Church is wicked, evil, pagan, whatever. My choice to become a Roman Catholic was because I had come across some discrepancies in the belief system of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I started scratching my head, and I wanted to say, you know what, I want to go back to the beginning. I want to go back to the oldest form of Christianity there is. And of course, that led me to Roman Catholicism. I studied for 6 years on my own before taking the full plunge, because when you become a Roman Catholic, you have to go through quite a process. Sometimes this process can take anywhere from 6 months to a year. But I was so nervous about doing this, and I took 6 years to study on my own, probably more like 7. And I have knowing so much, it was like becoming a priest. A priest takes 9 years, and I studied when I say study, it looked like my house became a library. So then I took the plunge, and I remained a Roman Catholic. And about a year into the religion, I learned about the theology of purgatory. And if anybody doesn't know what purgatory is or heard about it, it's like when you pass on. All Catholics believe that you cannot enter heaven unless you've been purified, and the purification process is called purgatory. And so when I learned about that, I had seen a beautiful video of a woman that had died and came back to life, and she was shown purgatory, and she would travel all over the United States giving her testimony. And I just thought, wow, this is fascinating. And I remember going to bed that night and praying, because the belief is that you can actually pray for the dead, and you can have special masses said for the dead, and this would help them get purified quicker and enter heaven. And when I knew this, I remember going to bed, and I said the Our Father prayer for all of my relatives, because I really had not learned the rosary completely perfectly. And I remember praying for every single relative I think of that died. And it was with that enthusiasm that I think sprung my gift, because when I look back on hindsight now, anything that we focus on gets bigger. Anything that we do with a lot of passion and enthusiasm really magnifies into our life. And so I believe that when I did that, I opened a doorway to the deceased, the departed, and they started showing up in my dreams. They would manifest when I would say a rosary. I would all of a sudden, someone's name would fall out of my mouth that I didn't even know, or I would wake up from a dead sleep just almost yelling someone's name. And I remember, oh my God, something's going on here. So I talked to my priest. My priest told me, it seems like you have the gift of the departed coming to you. And so the priest would talk to me, and he would say, let me know when this happens, especially if you have a name, and we'll have a special mass said for these people. And I ended up, the bishop of my diocese and a bishop in New York City worked with me, and they knew that I had this gift. And so that's where it started. I did not grow up having the gift of departed souls or seeing them or anything. I grew up very normal, didn't have any kind of, weird occurrences. And so this is when it started for me, the psychic mediumship. And I would get very vivid dreams of how they would die. I even had movie stars come to me. I have a really funny story you might like. Are you a fan of baseball, Ryan?
I'll listen.
Well, it's short.
Okay.
I remember one day waking up and the name Ty Cobb. He was a famous American baseball player, a little, maybe around the Babe Ruth era or a little after. And I said, oh my God, this is a baseball player. So I said a rosary for him. And then one day, weeks later, a couple months later, I went to church and I was meeting up with a group of gals and went into this special area that's very holy of the church. And it was so hot, much like what you're experiencing right now. And I nodded off, into sleep. And as soon as my head kind of bobbed down, I had a flash in my mind of a man in an old baseball uniform throwing a ball. And it startled me and I woke up and I said, oh my gosh, it's that baseball guy, but I couldn't remember his name for the life of me. So I went home, I did Google, I said, okay, who is this guy? So I put up, show me all the names of all the old baseball players. And I ended up finding him. And I said, well, my goodness, he's really reaching out, I guess it didn't work. He's still in purgatory. So I said, well, I want to learn about this guy. So I clicked on his bio. And when I clicked on his bio, I saw that his wife's name was Charlie. And that's my name. Although I go by Calypso, this is a social media name. Most all of my friends call me Charlie. And I said, okay, well, that's no coincidence there because, back in the day, Charlie was kind of a rare name for a woman. And so I told the priest, I said, we need to have a special mass said for him. And then I told my husband, I said, man, she showed up again and at church today and in a vision. And we calculated how long, in earth years, or that's what I like to say, how long he'd been in purgatory. It was like 42 years. And my husband laughed and he said, man, that's the longest inning ever. So I had, some interesting things happen, amazing things. And then I fell out of that belief system. One day my husband says, why don't you stay home? We were having so much fun being together. Our daughter got married. Our son went off to college. We were spending quality time together. And he says, why don't you not go to mass? Because I would go every week. I would do the whole confession and everything. And I said, okay, but I was really scared. It was a mortal sin to miss mass. And you could lose your soul. That's the belief I was in. And I said, okay. So then I did this a couple times. I went to confession. I came back. And then I said, you know what? Something clicked in my mind. I said, something's right here. And I stopped going, started spending more time at home on the weekends with my husband, having fun. And then I hit Google. I started to try to find what would give me peace of mind, knowing that I would end up going to hell if I did not want to go to church anymore. And I ended up doing a mass amount of research into near-death experience. And I probably listened and read hundreds of cases, probably over 500 cases of people that had died and passed on. And they all said, when it's not like what they taught in Sunday school. And they all had an overwhelming, it was over 85% of people that said there was nobody judging them. It was only themselves judging them in the life review. And there were people that had negative experiences. We've had those cases of people seeing hell or fire and all kinds of stuff, and they go out on on their soapbox preaching about hell. Mm-hmm. But the overwhelming number said there was nothing to fear at all. There is no creator like what you've been told that would judge you and send you to, hellfire. And a lot of them talked about reincarnation. And that really got me thinking. And that opened another door. And that led to some amazing discoveries. My first experience of past life, remembering. I think the universe knew that my belief system was, at a good place. And I would start having memories. And of course, that led to me being a past life, hypnotherapist.
Okay.
So the journey's been, it never ends. and it's every day is exciting. I never know where I'm going, but I always know I'm going somewhere that resonates.
Mm-hmm. So I've been making notes while you've been talking there, because I always like to establish patterns and stuff too. So if I find it interesting that, you know, when you started practicing, so you made the decision to devote yourself to the faith, to learn those practices. It wasn't until then you started to learn about all these things. So there's like kind of a twofold question in a sense, I guess. Like, did you ever have this knowing, if you go back before that this is where you were meant to be? Any signs from earlier age? And at the same time, kind of, it's interesting because, from my understanding, with Catholicism and Christianity, is this paranormal spectrum and parapsychology and all these other things that is associated with is something we don't talk about. So where's, not just fear of going to hell, but I mean, like, it's just, how would something like that's designed to steer you away, introduce these thoughts to pull you into this direction? So can you elaborate on that?
Well, it was let me tell you, there's a lot of fear. And when I first started leaving Catholicism, I started learning about energy. I didn't know how energy worked. I didn't know any of that. And that fascinated me. Of course, I had the near-death experience, of all those cases that I studied. That really helped me get over the fear. And then I stepped into the energy, and I started to learn how energy worked. And then I got my Reiki master, certificate and everything. I never in a million years would have thought that I would have been what I am today. Never. Because my relationship being a Christian was always positive, usually. I did have a lot of fear, before becoming Roman Catholicism. I think a lot of people that come from maybe a Christian religion, or they really try to put their best foot forward and go to church and they learn things, they do have a fear-based mentality going on a little bit, that if they do something wrong, there's a chance maybe you won't go to heaven or whatever, or you're always watching everything you do. So I never saw that I would be like this. And I have to say, it has taken baby steps. And one thing that I always fall back on is my research. I'm a research junkie. And I have to get comfortable knowing, and I like science. That helped me also learn many things. Dr. Emoto of Japan sealed a lot of things in my mind of how energy works and everything, and how the universe operates. And when I learned that, it kind of just opened me up. And I would drop one fear-based program that I had, living with me, and then I would drop that one, and I would drop that one. So I think what happened was baby steps. And the universe and your higher self, your higher self especially knows this. And so it's like they drip feed you. They download and they drip feed you, and it's like you release, and then you open up for something new. But it's not all at once. And I don't know if anybody could handle like a huge, because we all carry a lot of fear-based program and belief systems.
It's interesting.
It is.
Because you change the thought on how it was brought in. Oops. It changes your perspective.
Yeah.
So it could be both positive and negative at the same time. It can be, it can be a variety of things. So everything's been pretty well positive for you in all of your experiences. Have you ever encountered, anything negative through your involvement with the other side?
When I was leaving Seventh-day Adventist religion, which actually instilled a little bit more fear in me, because I was really, but it was also my vibration. And looking back in hindsight, I understand what happened. That was the most scary time for me, was going from Seventh-day Adventist religion to Roman Catholicism, because when I discovered discrepancies in that religion that I had basically picked up when I was 14, my mom died. My sister and most of the family became Adventist. So that's basically what I grew up with in my teen and young adult years. So when I left that and I found discrepancies in that religion, it left me a little angry and bitter. Like I felt like a person without a country. I felt like I've been lied to, and I was a little angry and bitter. And then I had a miscarriage, and then I look back and I think my hormones were really, I was in a bad place because I had a couple of miscarriages. Not that event really, but I look back at my hormones, and I entered a frequency, a low place, a little bit of anger and depression, shame, and I got attacked. Something attacked me. Now I know what it is, and this is how I help a lot of people in my work now. Because when your frequency drops to a certain level, it's just like your immune system. Your immune system drops, you're vulnerable to getting all kinds of, sicknesses or whatever. And when our frequency drops to a place of fear, shame, guilt, whatever, anger, it can be a spectrum of things, you're kind of vulnerable. And I was attacked big time. And I had negative thoughts that were very intrusive. But this also goes back to some of the more information that I learned about this attack later on. But at intrusive thoughts that I felt like were not my own. It was something else trying to just say, kill yourself. And I had never had that before. And I didn't know what to do, because now I would know exactly what to do, but then I was like, oh God, this is bad. And I tried everything I could do to try to get my mind off of those thoughts. I would try to stay busy. And then just, it's not no coincidence, but I decided one day I was going to start sewing. I like to sew. I had my machine and I started sewing some purses. And that got my conscious mind, as a hypnotherapist, when you're giving that conscious mind a job, your thoughts, your mind relaxes. And then the next thing I did was I took them to the little stores in my area, and they decided to carry them in their stores and sell them. And that made me really happy. When that started to happen, I felt good about myself. I was no longer feeling guilty, shame, all those things. My vibration went up, and that attack stopped immediately within 2 weeks. When I look back in hindsight, I know exactly what that was. And that's why some of my work is very important to me, because I get a lot of people coming to me. I feel like I'm being attacked. I've got all these things. And it's just like we have to be very proactive in our life, just like we are with our body. We have to be proactive. We try to live a healthy lifestyle. You have to be mindful of your vibration and the thoughts, and your emotional body as well. So that was a very scary part. But when I emerged from Catholicism into what I call basically New Age belief systems, or pagan or whatever, I didn't have any fears. Knowing the near-death experience and all that research helped me so much that I basically haven't looked back, and I haven't had any scary things like that.
And that's more than likely because you have like a very positive outlook on the phenomenon too. So it does. If we remove the phenomenon aside, if we're thinking negative about anything, then we're going to attract more of those negative things. You'll stub your toe. You'll drop your drink. All those normal things will happen when you're not in the present. You're not kind of focused. Your head's out and thinking somewhere else of all these other things, and then more present, more focused, higher by vibration, and then you start to notice, attractive. You start to notice more things that are attractive to you and things like that too. So with that being normalized in a sense, how confident are you that your interaction is something from the other side and not just an energy transfer?
Well, I tend to, I'm not stupid. I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. I know that there are entities and things. Let's talk about, certain species of aliens that have grays, reptilians. They can do things with the mind very easily.
Okay.
I think I do put my trust in my higher self and how the universe operates. I think my belief system that there is a divine order to how the universe operates. If I'm coming from a place of love and enthusiasm and passion, and I am having an experience and it's resonating with me and it feels good, I go there.
Right.
I've been following Bashar, Daryl Anka, who channels the alien Bashar, who's been doing that for over 30 years. I learned a lot from him and I think Abraham Hicks did this as well, of just following that passion in every given moment of every day. And this is something you'll hear me talk like a broken record to my clients or my live videos, that any given moment of every day, you have choices to make. You didn't come here to suffer. You came here to expand your consciousness and to live in alignment, which is living in joy.
Mm-hmm.
So I make sure that when I'm operating in a good place and I experience something, which I have, if it resonates, I go with it. That's my compass. You learn as you go along a little bit, your discernment, which is very important. So I think everybody has their own special compass built in. And if it resonates and you're using your wisdom as well, I always tell people, do research as well, if you experience something, because another thing that's really important too is we have our spirit guides always helping us. Mm-hmm. And they are helping us constantly every single day. And they're trying to get our attention. And when you're in alignment and you're following your joy and passion, they just kind of put things in your path. And it's like little presents, and you end up opening this, or it leads here. And when all of those things happen, those synchronicities happen, you're on the right track.
Have you ever had a situation where perhaps it was perceived as a positive, but was perhaps an evil spirit, tricking you into a negative experience? Or are you able to sense that? Because some of them can be tricksters, from what I'm told.
Yeah, they can be tricksters. It goes back to the energy vibration. There are entities, or whatever you want to label them. Some people label them demons. Some people will open themselves up to aliens or whatever. If you're coming from a place, it always goes back to your vibration. If you're operating in a frequency of a lot of doubt or fear, or you've got addictions, or you've got a lot of things, and you're I call it a little dabbling, It's kind of like what a lot of people would say when they were, doing the Ouija boards when they were kids or something, and they had a really scary experience, You can open yourself up to some, like I said, attacks or things happening. So I tell people, be very honest with yourself. Be very honest with yourself. Am I coming from a place that is a high frequency, high vibration? None of us are perfect. That doesn't mean we're operating at all this perfect place. But if you kind of give them a little bit of a checklist, if you have addictions, or you've got a lot of anger and resentment and victimhood mentality, and you want to start doing something, that you could open yourself up for attack. So I tell my clients, be very honest with yourself, because there is a chance that you could open a doorway to something that you're not ready for, and you end up coming to me for help. I personally have not had anything. I am very open. I'm very excited. And I know I'm coming from, just like I'll give a little experience, anything doing with reptilians. When I started doing my research into that and uncovering a lot of things personally, and in that, a lot of people would say, oh my God, what the hell are you doing? You're playing with the devil. But I'm coming from a place of enthusiasm, excitement, and I know because of my daily routine and what I do, I'm very proactive in my meditation, my daily activities, my diet, interacting with people, anything that I'm doing, I know I'm coming from a good place. So that makes me feel open, a little bit, probably more open than maybe some people.
So if people didn't do, like, you're doing quite a lot to maintain that positive environment, and you have the results of doing positive things to get positive results. So there's encouragement to continue to do that.
Yeah.
And I can understand for those in a depressive state, that may continue to do things that bring them in a decline once you're stuck in that spiral.
Yeah.
But I mean, do you have to do those things to obtain these goals, or can it come naturally, and then all these other things will kind of like develop as they go? Do you have to,
you mean like do certain things, maybe do self-development to get to a place where you're not vulnerable, you mean?
Well, like, could you make contact with the other side while in a positive way without taking care of yourself in terms of diet or meditation or any self-care?
Yeah.
Okay.
It does help because everything that we're doing with these things, our body, mind, and spirit, they're all connected,
Mm-hmm.
And so I always encourage people, not that you have to be a vegetarian or a vegan or you have to follow this protocol, and if you don't, then you're playing with fire. No, it just helps. It helps you, just like when we're learning how to drive, you want to learn how to do it properly. You want to learn the ways of the road, the safety, and all of these things. You need to learn those things before you just jump in your car. It helps.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, I completely understand where you're coming from. I'm just trying to understand how it works, because some people, I come from a place where there are these natural born people that have these abilities.
Yeah.
But they don't know they have these abilities. They live in fear because they think it's something else, or they don't develop it because they think it's something else, or it's blasphemous, or it's against their religion, or something up to that effect. But the commonality is, and that's why I find it intriguing that by you finding faith, or at least devoting to the research. So there's a fine difference between someone who is Catholic versus someone who practices Catholicism or Christianity or whatever religion, right? So we can all label ourselves, but to be actively following those teachers and those guides and doing the work, as we say in Freemasonry. The question that I have, and you kind of already said it, but I want to kind of elaborate on it if we can, but through your research, is there evidence or lessons that speak to consciousness in the Bible?
Yes, there's verses in the Bible that especially when Christ, and I'm not going to say the chapter or anything, I don't remember that, but where Christ says what he does, he told his disciples and the people around him, what I do, you're going to be able to do much better and greater things. He was talking about consciousness and healing and all of the things that are very esoteric actually in their nature. There's a lot in the Bible, and that's something that I am going to start trying to do, and that I do have a passion for, because there are a lot of stories in the Bible and verses and things like that, mixed in with a lot of contradiction, that's for sure, where you can see aliens, consciousness, the Kundalini, the chakra system. There's a lot of things layered in the Bible that people just don't realize. Mm-hmm. So for somebody that's let's say that somebody that's coming from a belief system that is Christian or whatever, and they're they're experiencing some really intriguing things, maybe, because there's a lot of things on TV now about ghosts and paranormal, and that really gets people kind of like really in asking questions, and questions are good because I believe that leads to a higher state of consciousness eventually. It's hard, because everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things I say is, if you can just get rid of all fear, but don't be stupid. If you can just get rid of fear and shame and victimhood mentality, and you want to start to open yourself up to learn and experience things, you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And just be open. But I've had clients come to me where I can tell their level of fear and shame and victimhood, and their belief system is very rigid, and they're coming into a certain place. And I have to kind of put the brakes on them a little bit and tell them, maybe just do this for a little while before you just jump into something else. I kind of ask them 20 questions before I, help them in any sort of way. I have to get a feel of where they're coming from. But anybody can have an amazing experience. Anybody can. It's what you do with that amazing experience,
Yeah, and interpretation. So there's many different opinions on how the story went down as well when we're reading these things, because that's what I was kind of trying to get into too. Because consciousness, I see evidence of, but I do also see evidence of a lot of people not realizing that consciousness is consciousness, and it's present in the Bible. So there's some Catholics, some Christians that I talk to that will not accept the paranormal or the extraterrestrial theory. But at the same time, and I'm not that I'm Catholic or anything, but I have one here, just coincidentally. But they rely on that book as being the truth, and they cherry pick passages, and they have this belief, and then another religion, another sect, even Judaism. How do I say that? So even in the Jewish faith, with the Torah, but I mean, even in the Hebrew Bible, that's what I was looking for. The Hebrew Bible, it's the same thing, just translated or still in Latin, but they have a different philosophy on the people that they worship. So it's interpreted in many different ways.
Actually, Judaism is actually more open than many sects of Christianity, because they have a lot of their esoteric teachings, like the Kabbalah and all of that. And I have found that a lot of Judaism is very open. I remember there was a lot of years where, being Seventh-day Adventist or being Catholic, I closed the door to believing in aliens. But when I was growing up, until the time my mom passed away at 14, I had encounters with UFOs, and I believed in them. And I remember checking every book out of the library, and Betty and Barney Hill, and I was feeding on all of that. And then religion kind of just dropped all that for me, and my mind didn't even think about those things.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting with the Judaism sect. As from my understanding, it's even older than the Christian and the Catholicism. So So if you look at the subtle changes with the current, and then you look at the difference there. Through a couple of Masonic teachings that I've endured. I'm just trying to see how I can frame this without revealing some of the secrets, but
come on now, give us a tidbit.
Well, it's been through some of the work, my comprehension of the rituals and the lessons. I'm sensing they acknowledge the existence of Jesus, but he's acknowledged as a man. He's not acknowledged as a deity, but he's a man who understands consciousness, and he's a man who has the ability to heal with his hands, which essentially is Reiki. Yeah. So where do you fit on? I mean, this is kind of controversial, but I mean, just because I always explore this. A little backstory of myself is I almost became a priest. Okay.
Oh, cool.
And then I started asking questions and then didn't get the answer. So that's so we're kind of similar in that sense. So that's why I'm asking this way, taking the opportunity just to see where your mind's at. So with these same book, but different interpretations and languages and concepts, because in Masonry, we use the King James version of the Bible as well. But you don't have to take allegiance to any deity. It can be anyone specific. So with that, they still talk about the creation of the temple and all these other things too. And Jesus is mentioned. He's part of the story, but he's nothing. He's barely even mentioned, but he's acknowledged.
Yeah.
So how important is this guy in terms of him being the messenger in reality, not taking in consideration how he's been blown up and without judging those who think it's more than it is or less than it is.
Yeah.
Where do you balance with that? Because you were with faith, out of faith, and then found into faith. Now you're all over the place. So what would Jesus do?
Yeah. What would Jesus do? Well, for me, I have gone completely on the other end, the other spectrum. Having done a lot of research into Zecharia Sitchin and looking at all of the ancient texts and writings, and understanding science is on board with a lot of this as well. And that's where my researcher, stuff is paid off. A lot of people would have a lot of fear even to tread in these waters, because it does go against the belief system of many religions, which are over 100,000 of just the Christian denomination. I believe that Jesus was a man, much like probably what the Freemason, what you've been taught. I don't dwell on him anymore. I don't pray anymore. I actually don't believe in praying because I feel it's coming from a place of lack. And I feel like every person is given the power, just like Jesus says, and you shall be able to do these things much greater than me. So what is that telling me? That tells me that to me, it tells me that we're all part of the great I am,
the message
we're all
is
part of something pretty special.
Mm-hmm. And it speaks more to the fact that he was carrying the message, and that is, to be more humble about it and to not deify him. Like the fact that we deify him today and hold is by our choice, not by his choice. And even in Masonry too, like he's part of, like he's man of Nazareth in the ritual. So like it's kind of alluding to the possibility that Jesus perhaps was Masonic as well.
Yeah.
But I mean that's a wholly different ballgame. But essentially what it categorizes him as is an individual at an individual place responsible for sharing the same message that we're all sharing in different places. It's just that's where he was. And then that's where that stuff happened. And then also those people are the ones that moved to the Western world and conquered. So that's why that's just something that happened there. So still important. Yeah. But then there's just so much stuff that we're missing.
We're missing a lot. But you know what? When you were talking, I was thinking of somebody you should definitely have on your show that can take you back with the Bible and all ancient texts and the root words of things and the meaning. And that's Peter Sabek or Sabek. Peter and then Sabek.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, you'll know him when you see him maybe. He has dissected. I mean, he can take you back to the original Latin of all kinds of languages and ancient texts. And he can just sit there for 30 minutes just talking about the Bible. And when you start uncovering the root meaning of a lot of the words in the Old Testament and New Testament, it's talking about the ones from the sky. It basically tells you these are aliens.
So that was my follow-up question. Could Jesus be an alien, or is he a messenger? Does he get the message from the alien?
Yeah. And there's references to the Elohim. And then, of course, we have the fallen angels in the Bible and the book in some of the Old Testament where they had relations with women. And these have popped up in many ancient texts. So you have a repetitive stories told in little different ways that are popping up in all different areas of the globe now. And with amazing science research and archaeologists doing all of these discoveries, they're starting to look at all the texts and how they're very similar. They're finding multiple amounts of stories from, many natives all over the world that speak of the flood, and many of them talk about being taken underground, like the Hopis during these cataclysms and stuff. And you're finding, you find this in the Bible, and you find this all over. And it's fascinating. When you start to uncover all of these, you're opening a Pandora's box. So you start questioning things. And for a lot of people, especially if you've come out of religion or you're still in it and maybe you've got one leg in and one leg out, it can be scary. But, this is the awakening. This is the disclosure. And disclosure just isn't happening on the media and all of that. It's also happening within ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like with many different people trying to interpret or answer the same question, what's the truth? What really happened? We're also seeing that these people are so focused on their own niche, but yet there's no collaboration of, or at least not in a global scale, when we can bring everybody to the table and be like, okay, this is what we know, this is what we understand, and then what do you think? And then, okay, I disagree with that, but I would accept this. So what is the truth?
Yeah.
So where do you, because you're research, right? And you're all over the place and you understand what we're taught current, but you mentioned Zecharia Sitchin, which is Sumerian, Anunnaki, which is the oldest. So there's the oldest. Everything else in between could have been, a speculation or an interpretation of the original source, which also is why we have the Bible today.
Wow.
And mankind has their hands in it for many different reasons.
Yeah.
So where do you sit in terms of the truth of why, where we came from, why we're here, and what's going to happen next?
Well, I think because of social media and of course the internet, platforms like yourself and the Gaia network and a lot of these things, people are being exposed to so much, and they're starting to scratch their head and ask questions. And that is good, because that's creating an awakening. Excuse me. It's helping us break some of those old programs that society has been drenched in for quite a few number of years, thousands, hundreds of years. I think that if you're speaking about Christianity, I hate to say this for some of the viewers, the Western, world, sorry, time for another drink. Our country, and of course, all of Europe, most all of Europe has really left Christianity. And they are really have opened themselves up, or they're forming their own beliefs. Everybody has their own truth. Everybody's, going at their own pace. They're forming their own beliefs. And some, hopefully most people are learning, allowing themselves to drop some of those beliefs when they're no longer serving them.
Right.
The Western world, especially in the United States, we have more of a Christian population than more so Europe. Europe is really fallen away. Most all of the churches over there are like museums now. Nobody goes. Over here, we have a little bit more, especially in the Bible Belt. But with every generation, there are new possibilities. And so with the generation that's got the cell phone glued to their hand and they're watching shows and content like yours, and you have the Gaia Network and all of these old rigid belief systems are just crumbling, they're crumbling. And that's a good thing, but I know, and that's a hard thing for a lot of people to hear. But when you start to do your research and you start to really, if you've done your research and you can you can be honest with yourself, you can see the toxicity that a lot of these religions have perpetuated for thousands of years, killing, the Inquisition, the burning of witches, all of these things. You can see that Christianity, if it was really doing something fantastic, why did it have so much negative things come out of it. And people are seeing this. You know, history is doing us a great service. And it's that history that we're learning about our past. Zecharia Sitchin, the Sumerian tablets, Göbekli Tepe, so many things. Amazing shows like yours. Disclosure is happening. People are starting to open themselves up to ask questions. And so we're coming out of these rigid belief systems. And I think when we go into the future, I think we're going to go through a few bumps and maybe incur a few bruises, especially when we're merging into the idea like the ET embassy, you know, with the alliance and future contact, which I believe is not that far away. People are going to be faced with some things, and it's going to cause a mass awakening. So we're entering some amazing times, and I think history is serving us well, you know, because it's all of those ancient texts and all of these things, and people really, science. One of my favorites is Paul Wallace on the Fifth Element, who was a former priest of the Anglican Church, and he is just like you and me. He's written books, and he's breaking all those molds and he's talking about the Bible and how the different texts and stuff are saying, wait a minute, hello, you know, these words mean certain things, you know, because most of us were sheep. It spilled into our culture and our society. Much of the United States was built on the 10 Commandments, you know. So we've been programmed, and it's all of these things and history thousands of years ago being uncovered that is actually coming, you know, to the surface and helping us all awaken.
And I'm with you 100%.
Yeehaw!
But to simplify it, what are those things? What is the answer to what created us? Why are we here? What happened?
Well, for everybody, it's going to be different. But I think the mainstream, especially the people that have, like I said, come out of religion and they're entering this phase of disclosure and awakening and learning, we come from, if you're going to go with, you know, Zecharia Sitchin, the Anunnaki, basically the ones from the sky, the ones from the stars came here. They terraformed our planet. They saw that we were a species, Homo sapiens sapien. And they mingled, you know, and this is where you get some of the scriptures, mingled with women or mingled with our DNA, upgraded us so that we could, for a lack of a better word, maybe take orders or do something, because the Zecharia Sitchin and the Sumerian tablets talk about mining gold. And so, and that's where it started. I think after that, a lot more things happened, you know, not just to put it all into one clump there with the Anunnaki. I think several things happened in different parts of the area of the world. And as we, caveman, now human, able to understand, this is where you have the Garden of Eden, where the snake came into the garden and said, if you eat of the tree of knowledge, you will learn of life and death. You'll start to open yourself up to all kinds of things that, you know, knowledge, basically. So that's what the aliens did. They gave us that knowledge where we know, you know, we were more like animals than we were what we are today. Now they upgraded us to help us to think on our own. We were given the reptilian brain, I believe, you know, that helps us to survive, tells us when we're hungry, when to gather food, how to do all of these things, and then, you know, we learned more on how to grow gardens and build these amazing, civilizations, although much of it was done with their aid, of course, like Egypt and, you know, all of the great, you know, pyramids around the world and stuff. But I believe that's where we came from. And I think the big crescendo is a big reunite, like a big family reunion.
So that kind of leads to, we only have a few minutes left before we get into our break, but I mean, it kind of leads to the question of where did they go? Where are they now? And when are they coming back?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I still believe they're here, or coming here every so often, keeping an eye on us. Depending on what species we're talking about, we also have ones that have been here all along, inner Earth. The ones that are working with our government who made treaties in the 1940s, the ones that are visiting here from, other planets within our solar system, all eyes are on us right now because we're going through an amazing process of entering higher states of consciousness and to a place where we can accept, perhaps, I don't know the percentage, but accept the fact that we are them and they are us. And there's a lot that we just haven't been told.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, they're not doing a very good job telling us anything. And that's with disclosure, you mentioned many times too. That's developing, that's unfolding. I mean, there's many things going on, even like on my phone's blowing up this second. People are questioning authenticity of disclosure advocates, whether or not they were telling the truth and things like that. So like it's tough times right now.
Yeah.
But a lot goes into disclosure, because if they say aliens exist, then that means ghosts exist. That means near-death experience exists. That means all of this stuff exists. Yeah. So it's dripping, but I mean, like, are they going to cover it up again, or is it just bleeding out and we're going to patch it and then leave it alone, or they're going to rip it off like a Band-Aid and just see how many people do it?
I think it's fluid. I think the situation is fluid with that. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is we're being drip fed. Sorry, my notification. A lot of it is being drip fed right now to us. Mm-hmm. But I think at some point, given that there are all of those big players that we don't see doing the little chess game, they have a plan. Sometimes their plans fail. It doesn't happen in the exact time they want it. And I think there's a lot of play going on with the powers that be. And who knows, it could be something very heavy duty that it will create a mass disclosure, or it could be something, where it's more like little by little. But I have a tendency to believe that it's going to create something massive is going to happen.
And it would have to be positive. Like they would not, or destructive to create eventually a positive outcome.
Yeah.
There's strategy, because if they know and they have control of the release, then they're going to release it in a way that they can still control it. If they don't have control of it, the planet's just going to show up. They're going to show up and be like, surprise, we're here. And then we're kind of dealing with it. So we're going to pause right there. And we'll be back after, we'll continue after a message from our sponsors. If you're listening to this audio only version, head over to youtube.com/The Experiencer Support Association. So you see the video that goes with the audio. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Alliance for Diplomatic Extraterrestrial Contact, AEDC. So remember, you're listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, a podcast by the Experiencer Support Association, and we will be right back.
It's your business. It's your property. Your assets are worth protecting. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services specializes in patrolling and inspecting residential or commercial property against fire, theft, vandalism, terrorism, and illegal activity. People and buildings are monitored to prevent crime. Keep your property, your people, and your assets safe from threat. Our elite staff are dual licensed private investigators and security guards. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services. Go to blacklightiss.com.
The same thing that draws aliens to our planet is the same thing that draws us to others. Exploration, curiosity, sustainability of life. That's why we go. It would make sense as to why they're visiting here.
Travis! Quit playing around, man. Get back here. Travis!
The last thing I remember was this numbing shock. Stunning sort of a feeling. Very powerful.
Get away from me!
I was just out of my mind with fear, just screaming the whole time.
It's been theorized that aliens prefer remote areas because they don't want to attract attention. Whatever it is that they're doing, they would want to do that in a less populated area. There are multiple accounts of the same thing from people from all over the world. People that do not know each other, do not live in the same cultures, and they're all looking up, they're all seeing things in the sky. So it would be naive of us to think that
Ryan is one of Canada's leading new UFO investigators. He conducts and oversees UFO investigations on a constant basis and was really taken by his research. He's compiled a tremendous amount of data regarding UFOs in Canada. And just as interesting, he really goes over how UFO investigations are done and what are some of the mistakes that people make when they submit evidence. Note for starters, don't edit your videos or photos before you send them. If you want to hear more follow-up conversation between Ryan and myself, you can go to richardolanmembers.com, where we have a candid conversation on ufology, the paranormal, and more. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other.
Welcome to the Observation Deck, a state-of-the-art, one-of-a-kind virtual platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus, just like you would in real life. First, you install the application and design your very own unique avatar. Then you're free to explore the various areas of the campus at any time from anywhere. There's so many areas and activities to choose from on the platform. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, a large expo hall, a movie theater, a nightclub, an art gallery, and even a beach. Come attend a conference or take a class or hear a lecture. Meet new friends and interact directly with presenters. It's all right here on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Where in the world will you go?
Have you ever wondered, or maybe just thought to yourself, if there were others just like you? You know, people with extraordinary abilities, psychogenic advancement, and perhaps unique intuitions. Maybe you just wondered if there were other people who experienced unimaginable, unexplained, or even unusual and paranormal events. Are there people who have more questions, more fears than answers? Well, you're not alone. You've never been alone. We believe you. Sign up for EA today by going to tesacan.org/EA. That's TESACAN.org/EA. Welcome back. You are listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. Did you know that we have a private community for our members of our YouTube channel? If you become a member, you will get bonus content like exclusive videos, including bloopers, behind the scenes, and members-only Q&A. Recently, I just did episode 9 of Citizen Paranormal Report, where you'll see that I went to NORAD and I got detained by military police. So if you're a member, you get to see that and I recorded that video. I wasn't supposed to, so I'm not sure if you've seen that yet, but check that out. So if you've also experienced an unexplained event involving paranormal, UFO, extraterrestrials, dogman, or any other paracryptid, head over to testacan.org/reporting system. Let the others who have already reported be that example that proves we are making a difference. If it wasn't for these reports, we would not be able to do what we do, and for that, we thank you. I'm still here with Calypso. How you doing?
Doing good, hanging in there,
Good.
having fun.
Good. There are there's a bunch of chatter about Christianity while we were gone there. So I'm gonna segue back into that, but then get back into the AEDC. But would you consider Earth to be purgatory?
Purgatory is another dimension. It's the spirit realm, which is the fourth dimension. It is attached to our planet. I mean, it's not the Earth that we all see. It's in a different dimension of Earth. But yeah, it is part of our planet. Purgatory is many of us believed that we would go to heaven, somewhere up there in the heavens or the sky, away from Earth, long ways away, whatever. But I personally believe in my work as a psychic medium, I have felt that it's very much part of the fourth dimension.
All right.
And of course, there's levels, and there's different states of what people would call purgatory, life after death. There's different levels of all of that.
Maybe for some people, hell is Earth. Earth is hell.
Yeah.
And then
we have the ability to create, hell on Earth, and in our own personal life. And that's part of the amazing process that so many people don't realize, coming from a dogmatic belief, is that you have so much power to create the reality that you want for yourself just by the thoughts and the beliefs and things that you hold on to. Mm-hmm. And the emotions that we have. It's a shame that we haven't been taught, how to deal with our emotional body, And this is where I tell a lot of people that come to me, a good dose of Buddhism goes a long way, because they do help teach you how to not, feed the victimhood mentality, and how to let go and to meditate, and teach you great skills that will help you maneuver through our life a little easier. And that's something that I really hope, as we go into higher states of consciousness, that becomes more of the mainstream, is learning how to deal with the monkey mind.
or learning how to communicate with those who have monkey minds.
Yes.
Okay, so you are part of the Alliance for Diplomatic Extraterrestrial Contact, otherwise known as the AEDC. Previously on our podcast, we had Sylvain Rochon. Sylvain Rochon? I can't do it. I'm not even going to try. So from your perspective, what is AEDC, and why did you join, and how are you helping them with their movement? Well,
it was amazing. It just kind of happened. I still scratch my head how it happened, but I know there's no accidents. At least that's my belief system, and that nothing is a coincidence. But I ended up learning about them from Kevin Briggs, the author. He's somebody you should have on your show too. He's got an amazing story of being abducted and being a contactee from childhood. And he told me about this group that was forming, going through the stages to create an embassy for future contact. And one thing led to another. And I ended up, he put me in contact with Sylvain. And the next thing I know, I was making a date with Sylvain on Zoom. And it was on January 1st, I ended up having a dream. And I always pay attention to my dreams, especially when they're very vivid, because being a psychic medium, a lot of the so-called things that would happen to me would happen in dream time, which of course is very important, especially when you're starting to learn about astral traveling and, entering higher states of consciousness in your dream time, and just so many things. But the dream was I was here in our house, and I was in the bedroom sleeping with my husband, and all of a sudden I wake up, I go to the window, I open the curtains, I see that the sky is just pitch dark, like a massive storm was happening. But I said to myself, well, that's kind of odd because it's supposed to be a sunny day. It's supposed to be bright and sunny. And I pulled the curtains back, looked up a little higher into the sky, and I could see a giant mothership. And I have not had very many dreams about UFOs at all. So this one I really took notice. And I knew what was happening. I knew that that contact was happening. And the next thing I saw was a scout ship, or a smaller ship, looked like a ball of light, but it came over to the window, and I knew they were basically going to pick me up and take me to the embassy because contact was happening. And I told my husband, I says, I've got to go with them, but I don't want to go unless you come with me, and the dogs and our son Roman, who lives here with us. And my son went and got the dogs, and we basically climbed in from the window into the ship, and they were beautiful beings. They almost looked like S04E15, and they were just smiling from ear to ear. They opened up the hatch, so to speak, and I got in. And when I got in, I saw Mark Zuckerberg. And I was like, oh my God, hi. And then I found my seat, and I woke up, and I was like, wow, that's some dream. So, and it was that following day or so that I had my first meeting with Sylvain. And I have to backtrack a little bit here, because when I got in, was telling my husband about the ship, I says, I'm an ambassador to the embassy, and I have to go, but I'm not going to go unless you're on board. And when Sylvain and I talked, he was basically saying, would you like to be an ambassador, and be a part of the group? And he just invited me in, and I became part of their wonderful group.
Wow.
And I am so passionate about it, so excited, because I've had other dreams about it as well, of this time period, that is not too far from where we are today, of contact happening. And how that looks, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I know it's going to happen. So I'm just so excited and feel very, privileged to be a part of their group. And, my role is basically just living my life, doing what I'm doing, making contact with people like you, and talking about this, talking about having discussions about disclosure and the future embassy, because, our species, we have a way of doing things. We have a protocol, so to speak, of how we do things in the world. And when we're talking about alien contact, I truly believe there needs to be there will be protocols that are going to happen. I believe that we're kind of have those protocols already, because we are working, and this is going to be part of the disclosure movement, but it's really happening quickly. As we've been working with aliens since the 1940s, of course, sooner, but of course, around that time period. And now we have, these amazing people like Haim Eshed of Israel, the head chief of the space program there in Israel, who went viral, I think, last year, saying that we've been working with aliens for over 30 years. And that's a big thing. And it's all these little things that, are happening with channels like yours, other channels, shows like Gaia, all of these things that are getting people talking about it, soft disclosure, even though the government is drip feeding us. We are working and evolving towards an amazing future where we all believe, I think most people believe, at some point we are going to experience contact. And so to be part of a legitimate organization with diplomats and people working from all over the world, scientists, astronauts, even the United Nations is working with with our group. And working at this time to find a country that would house the embassy. But, making that checklist and following the protocol and following the ways of doing things that will help us benefit a little bit more, I think, as a species. Future contact, it's still up in the up for question on exactly how it's going to happen. But I think when we lay a foundation of positivity and we talk about it, we make these plans, we have these plans that have been shown on our website, and they have a future conference coming up later this year in October. It's all of these little things combined and all of the efforts that we make on a personal level, talking about these things and when you do this over a certain amount of time period, when we actually get to that place where contact happens, we're in a good place. We have that choice. We can start laying a foundation of good things, unity, consciousness, peace, love, all of that stuff, we lay that foundation, then we can move into the future laying a foundation that is good. And like I always say, of high vibration. And you can't go wrong when you're laying a good foundation based on all of those beliefs.
Mm-hmm. It's very, and to push towards, like, it's still tackling the disclosure bead, just with a positive approach, looking into the future of welcoming and accepting them in the terms of, to make it more inviting, so they would want to come forward. Whereas the other side of disclosure, which unfortunately I'm still stuck in, and that's clawing and fighting with, for answers.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking for, especially with this association being part of, this alliance being part of our association, so it's like two large groups joining together, is to start, pushing towards putting the efforts towards more positive approach, and to get more positive results, and to build and I love the concept. I love the idea. So Sylvain found me too. He's like this little recruiter.
He's got feelers.
Yeah, he just goes around and he's just like, hey, you interested in this and that. So that's what you're doing for AEDC. Now, we also have you guys are going to do a podcast for the Experiential Support Association. Are you able to share anything about that? The idea, where you guys are at? I know we're still working details in private, but I mean, can we give a little teaser to our peeps?
Well, you're going to have some very exciting guests. You're probably going to have some, dignitaries and politicians. You're going to have scientists on there. These are all supporters of the Alliance. When I say supporters, we have supporters all over the world. And this doesn't mean they're financial supporters. We always want supporters. We're trying to get as many people possible to support. And that means just by word of mouth is you're supporting. Or if you're on social media and you have a platform, supporting by talking about it, opening up discussions, creating Facebook groups or whatever. That's how we look for supporters. But of course, we're looking for supporters that really will, that the United Nations would say, okay, this is, we're laying those foundations of people with,
if we're going to do this,
backgrounds like scientists. And we recently had a Russian cosmonaut instructor or something that came aboard. So we're going to be interviewing people like this and talking about it and their beliefs and what they're excited about, so it's going to be amazing, because these are people from all over the world, and many of them for many years who have held these beliefs that we're living in the day where it's not that far away.
And I like the whole, like, the concept of, like, okay, like, if to create something appealing, again, like if the United Nations is going to do something about it, and they come to a time where they need to select civilians to be in charge of it, and so it's good to have a choice. So then they could also privately groom and drip certain things to certain people and information once they start to see how that movement is going, because it'll be a lot easier for them to like, because they can release the information, of course, at any time, but to whom are they leaking it to? Right?
Yeah.
To whom are they allowing all these things going? And they watch that. Who has the most reach? Who has the most attention? What kind of result is coming from that? So like this, and I like, because being Canadian, like my experience, it's just like working with Canada and working and fighting with the United States. That's basically it. So, but I mean, but we, as much as I understand, we want the same goal, but there's a bit of, there's a whole bunch of different cultures and different ways of understanding our governments and whatnot. Yeah. We do need that United Nations approach without the United Nations, if you will. Yeah. We do need to have commentary from perspectives of other places in the same earth to weigh in on the same phenomenon, to emphasize that it's not just an American problem. It's, Canada has UFOs too, Europe has UFOs, and we all come together and be like, look, like, and if we are able to, I wouldn't say revolt, but I like the idea of a peaceful protest, or a demonstration, and basically like, hey, like, we're ready, and then there's more of us, right? And I mean, I'm totally excited about it. I like where this is going. Yeah. I'm excited because I don't even know who the guests are. Yeah. But
that's where we're pulling them out from. The supporters that have been on board for a while, and it's exciting. And a lot of people, we this is where we are divisive as a species. Sadly, it's through government systems. And people can be, a little jaded by many of the things that, when you start talking about, government agencies or world organizations like the UN, but we have to kind of get back into reality a little bit. We all have some sort of, where we feel a little jaded or, very skeptical because we've been lied to for so long, but at the same time, we also have to understand our world operates in a certain way. And for many years, it's operated in many ways very well. And we have to look at that, Mm-hmm. And that's why I like it, because, and the other thing I like about it is too, it's just like any embassy in the world. When you go there, you're on that soil. It's like it's your own little country. Mm-hmm. And so we're saying to the extraterrestrials, this is your country. This is specifically for you. And opening ourselves up to them and allowing them to say, this is a place for you. Who knows if that's going to be the place of, actual contact or what, but it's going to be there. Mm-hmm. And, where our attention grows and it's coming from a place of love and excitement. And that is, I'm very big on keeping a focus on the reality that you want to create for yourself. It's just like what we focus on gets bigger. If we focused on the negative, then that's what we're going to experience. If we focus on the positive, and we stay, focused on what we're trying to do, and this work towards the embassy, forming these groups which you're a part of now, and it's so exciting, and I'm a part of, and more people will be a part of, and we come together in unity and peace, and we have this long-term goal here. We're going to get there, and we're going to lay some amazing foundation, and I think the end goal will be spectacular. That's the timeline I'm shooting for.
And it's a different dynamic too, especially like from our perspective. Like this show is geared towards experience your testimony, understanding the phenomenon, why we are selected, why we have these abilities, like trying to understand why we are the gifted ones. Whereas that channel, that program, it's approaching the same phenomenon, but in a different way, but they work together, right? Yeah. And then they can be compounded on each other. So we're kind of, and it's within the same house, within the same unit. The political part can be frustrating and aggressive, but you guys, what I appreciate is that the political approach without the aggression. Yeah. Many people, like, I mean, I if someone was aggressive with me, I wouldn't give in to a political approach. I'd be like, no, you don't deserve it, you know? Yeah. So this is kind of creating an opportunity where maybe not global disclosure, but perhaps private disclosure. And then that's like super jelly for me because I want to know. I won't tell anybody. Just tell me. I want to know. So I know what I'm doing, you know? So like, it's super exciting. Okay. So one more thing I want to talk about, and then I want to kind of get into a segment, that last segment. And I do want to do it because we've been talking about the Bible for a majority of the show. So I kind of segue into this part with the Bible. But this is a picture that was shared with me. When you were describing your dream, I was looking at this. Is this what you saw in your dream, or is this something different?
This was a totally different experience before I even encountered. This was, I think, last year. My years have jumbled in together. Since the pandemic, I forget, you know, what year. You know, I feel like I lost 2 years, even though I stayed busy. But this is a totally different experience. I had been in meditation, which is a daily practice of mine. I always meditate in my backyard under my ficus tree. And I had, and this was in the summer. This is like around August, I do remember. And I had sensed there were 3, I could feel reptilians on top of my roof. And they were black. Now, I was seeing this with my third eye, but also almost more than that. It came with a lot of feeling. And, you know, I just don't always do that. I'm not somebody that's really kind of like, you know, sorry, if you're getting notifications, I'm sorry. I don't know how to turn that off.
Nope, it's okay. You're good.
I don't walk around my day, you know, with my feelers out. I'm pretty like focused, you know, doing my daily stuff, you know, being a wife, cooking, gardening, you know, things like that. But it was in this meditation that I sensed these beings on my roof. And I said, okay. And then the more I tapped in, I realized they were reptilian. And this was around the time I was starting to learn a little bit about reptilians. And of course, what you mostly find on the internet is negative, although I'm very careful on my beliefs. And, you know, I don't just jump in head first believing everything I read or hear. And so I kind of opened up a telepathic communication with them. And I said, okay, I said, who are you?
Right.
And they said, Montauk. And when the letters dropped in my mind, it was Montok. Okay. And I said, okay. And so and this was over a couple of days, you know, I would, you know, part 1, part 2. And they basically explained to me that they were a hybrid of reptilians, although a large part of them, their physique was very much reptilian. They were black, they had scales, but they were a little bit of a hybrid mixed with some tall gray, some aquatic being. And they were, most of them were based in Canada, British Columbia area, and the Alaskan area, which I found out later. And they made me aware that they were, they had taken some Native American women from Canada and as part of this hybrid program, but these women were not returned. They physically took them and they have them to this day. And when I heard that, I freaked out. I said, don't you dare. And that's when my guards went up and I said, don't you dare even think about abducting myself. And then, of course, I was worried about my daughter. And they just kind of laughed and said, don't worry, we're not here for that. And they kind of made me feel like I was part of them in some way. And they explained to me that they were taken, not too many of these women, I would say no more than 6 women that they had taken. And they were using their ancient Native American DNA and creating hybrids. But these women would stay with them because many of the hybrid babies that they were working with or whatever didn't seem to do very well. And so they thought that, well, it's going to be best maybe to keep the mother, you know, here on board ship. And then they showed me an area of Canada that they were stationed underneath the water. So their ships were submersible for water in a very remote part of British Columbia in a large lakes or somewhere up there. And so they told me this, and I was like, okay. So then I took straight to my research, and I started researching the Native American women that were missing. And then one thing led to another. I ended up learning about the Alaskan Triangle and many people missing over there. Well, this is when I mentioned earlier that when you're in a place of excitement, enthusiasm, and you're on a like a path and you're learning something, your guides are going to be they're going to be saying, okay, look here, look here. Your guides are going to start showing you things. They're going to start opening things up so that you learn in these things. So when I started learning about the Alaskan Triangle, it led me to some show, and I started looking at clips on YouTube. And when I was listening to the video, the guy says Gus in the video. That was my husband's name. Then I click on another video, and it says Charlie, and that's my name. And then I ended up learning that as well from I don't remember his name. He's a Harvard scientist or something, and he was doing a talk on alien abductions, and he had done some amazing research, and he had started talking about these Native American women that they were finding in their DNA, or men too, but they were doing specific Native American DNA, and there were only about a very small amount, maybe 3 or 6 people, I don't know, maybe less than that, where they were able to trace their DNA back super far and to one source. And this source had something to do with the Beringian Strait, if I'm pronouncing it right. In other words, the continent that connected Alaska to Asia. I think that's it. So all of my research that opened up this door, what the Montauk's were telling me about Native Americans made sense. They were looking, the Montauk, these beings wanted that specific DNA, and it was with some of these women. And there were so many synchronicities when I did that research that I was just like floored. Well, the other thing that happened was interesting, of course, was their name, Montauk. And one day I was doing something, I was looking for just an image on Pinterest, and I clicked on it, and it took me to a website. I was trying to get the image, but somehow I clicked a link, and it took me accidentally to a website. And as it loaded, I saw Montauk, M-O-N-T-A-U-K, the Montauk Project, which maybe you've heard many of your guests talk about, which is a project in New York where a lot of things have taken place. You know, the Philadelphia experience and experiment and things like that. And I about fell over backwards because I had never heard of Montauk. And as I did more research, I realized that the Montauk, where did it get that name? It got it from Native Americans. And these Native Americans, funny thing is, their names, Princess Pharaoh, and they have their last name is Pharaoh. And there's a lot of talk that they come from the ancient, they come from Egypt, that there were ties with the Egyptians and Native Americans. So many things happened after this encounter. But oddly enough, that picture that you had up there, the day before, after I had that first contact with the Montauk, I wanted some confirmation. And I said, okay. I said, I want you to show up. I want to see your ship. I want you to come here. And so the next day I walk out of onto my patio, and I completely forgot that I had asked this. I turn my head and I see this cloud formation. Now, a lot of ships actually cloak in clouds, believe it or not. You can look at some great pictures of Mount Shasta, things like this. And they told me the reason they decided to do it this way was because I live between two thoroughfares, or whatever you want to call it, of the Ontario Airport and San Bernardino. So there's a lot of traffic above my house. So they decided to show up this way. And they did this the day after I asked them to come and show me. And I took that picture, but I sent it to my girlfriend, and she did something like you were doing a few minutes ago. And as she played with the color, she saw that there was a light source in there, and that's that coloration that you can see up there.
Yeah, I was trying to adjust the exposure without knowing what the focal point was.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And this has happened to me twice. I asked them to come twice. And the other one is in a video form. I didn't send that to you, but so I have a connection with them. And this is when I started to learn that I was actually part of the Montauk Project in the 80s. After my mom died in 1981, I was barely 14, and I ended up being a runaway. And this opened me up to three-letter agencies, which of course I was groomed since I was a child. And I was part of the Montauk Project. The only information that I've been able to gather from past life regression, it was only about 3 years during the Montauk Project there. Yeah, so it's all interesting. And I know a lot of people have heard about the Montauk, project and everything, but that is when it started to open up a can of worms for me. And it began a lot of my past life hypnotherapy, where I could uncover some memories and things, which I had always had, but didn't, understand why I had these dreams or memories happening until I put all my puzzle pieces together. Mm-hmm. But yeah, very interesting. And they're very tied to me. If I asked them to probably show up again, they probably would. There is a strong connection. And of course, I have a strong reptilian soul blueprint and a lot of reptilian DNA, which scares a lot of people, but not me. There's good and good, bad, and ugly of all species. So yeah, it's exciting. This is the exciting part of my life that I actually don't talk about that much, because it takes a good level of openness to have a discussion about things like this.
No, and I agree. And a lot of things are coming to mind, because I was trying to find within enough time. There's an experiencer case. I'm trying to find it to show you as an example, where through conversation with him. So I'm kind of scrolling through my website right now, but I'll stop. He mentioned Camp Hero. So Camp Hero is where the Montauk Project happened. And so it was one of the first cases I investigated through Tessa, where he was talking about, I'm trying to remember from memory, I can see it, but I had it on the website, couldn't find it in time. But, working with reptilians and working with and secret space program, kind of those type of criteria or scenarios or events. I worked through a couple cases with this experiencer, and worked with him long enough to believe that he believes this has happened.
Yeah.
But I mean, the testimony is the same in terms of, like, he just explained to me, like, Camp Hero, all these other things. That's what he remembered, because it was something he saw. He didn't know anything about Montauk. He didn't know anything about all that until I researched what Camp Hero was, because it was like a constant. And then I learned all these things about, Montauk Project, New York being close to, close to home and things like that too. And then through conversations with him, I was just like, what does the word Montauk mean to you? He's like, I don't know. Is that some native thing? And, which is not wrong, but I mean, it didn't click. It didn't connect it. So to me, I was just thinking, okay, well, maybe this guy hasn't done some research, and he's not, he's really, really uninformed.
Yeah.
So what does he know about Camp Hero? And he knows absolutely nothing about how it operated. He just explained the characteristics, which is similar to what you explained too. So it's kind of interesting to have those testimonies. Yeah. There's evidence that they've done that.
Yeah.
we know that there's people that were part of it. Some of them have come forward and testified and things like that too. And then there's also some people discovering that they were part of it, because if they were successful, we wouldn't know about it.
Yeah.
You know,
Stuart Swedlow is a big one. He has a lot of recall. And there's a couple others, and I can't remember their name off the top of my bat, but I could shoot it to you in an email. But these guys have a lot of recall.
Well, anyone you want us on our show, just send it to admin, and CC will definitely get that set up. What is your opinion on the Montauk Project versus MK Ultra? Are they the same? Are they different? Do they work together?
Well, MK Ultra I believe is what a lot of people that are part of the SSP, they kind of get funneled into that. MK Ultra being the part of the where they do the mind things. You know, they put you in some mind benders, and they do, you know, a lot of things to compartmentalize your brain and to gain control. A lot of the whistleblowers now are a lot of men like Randy Kramer that are part of the SSP. Right. My work, although I did do I have recall of a couple of times with being, you know, with aliens and, you know, going from Earth to the moon. But most of mine was done through the government. They would take a lot of women, long process to go through. It's kind of a mind bender to talk about how they do this, but you know, they have the capability to use time. And I have a lot of recall of being on missions where I was sent back in time or sent forward in time. My memories all come from basically just working with the government. They used a lot of females, you know, for missions and sent to certain places. You know, sadly, women, you know, for sex and things, to do specific missions as the women, you know, to do certain things with an end goal in mind. I have memories of being sent to the Middle East, Russian, some big names as well that I won't drop, where I have memory recall of doing specific missions that were with some pretty high up people. Mine was basically Earth-based, where you have, you know, most of the whistleblowers now who are males talk about being off-planet, like Randy Kramer, where most all females were really used with the MK Ultra, Montauk Project, and other, you know, 3-letter agencies, and were groomed to do specific things that were just Earth-based. Many of them, sadly, from the Montauk Project, didn't make it. There were a lot of fatalities, men and women, but also a lot of the women were sent off planet as part of the sex trade through Moon and Mars, through a lot of the reptilian bases and things like that. I only had a few negative encounters and memory recall with reptilians, but most of my missions that I remember and have recall are from the Middle East, Russia, and a lot of China. I remember before the pandemic as well. Now, a lot of these people, they're 20 and back, so they call it there is over. Some of these people are, you know, but I still feel like sometimes I'm used occasionally still, because just prior to the pandemic, I was on a long mission, multiple missions in Asia. And I remember having a lot of encounters with white vans and things. And then when I would wake up, I would have like total recall of what I had just, you know, done. And I was like, where in the hell did that come from? Mm-hmm. And of course, I remember, you know, being part of these programs. And, you know, I move on with my day. I try not to dwell on these things because that can negative spiral you into something. So I just move on about my day. But then looking in hindsight, you know, we entered the pandemic and a lot of, you know, all the stuff that came out of China. I realized that there was something going on there. Most all the time they wipe your memory. But there are a lot of cases where the memory is still there and you can remember. I think that has a lot to do with when you enter higher states of consciousness, you have abilities to remember things a little bit more. You're able to understand and astral travel, and you're able just to do a little bit more, as where a lot of the memories that I had to recover from past life regression and things like that. These were memories from when I was much younger. But can actually still remember a handful of them. But I was in lower states of consciousness, so I didn't have a clear idea. Whereas now I'm able to understand a lot more. I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's like almost like the higher states of consciousness, you're able to have recall a little bit easier. I think there's something there, when you're operating in a really great place, a high frequency where you're just able to retain things a little bit more, and your understanding is different as compared to when I was younger and in a negative place.
Now, the Stranger Things TV show, okay, Hollywood, or perhaps soft disclosure on the Montauk project, because that's essentially what's going on in that. Yeah,
for sure. It's both. It's a lot of it, we have a lot, somebody said the other day, I was listening, and they said that there's a lot of so-called white hats in the field of media, and they're allowing a lot of, disclosure like these to come out, to drip feed us, We're also drip fed a lot of other stuff that's very negative, like Independence Day, to scare us about, future contact, that, we're going to be invaded and it's going to look really ugly and things like that, which yes, can happen given the reality of how our planet operates, where we have a select few controlling the chess game. Mm-hmm. Just like Randy Kramer mentioned on your show, it could very well turn into what could be an ugly invasion with an agenda behind it.
Who's telling the truth? Because they allow it, right? Because if they put it in movies in Hollywood, it's going to be like it's just Hollywood. You're seeing it on TV. It's make-believe. But if it was like, okay, you're allowed to express yourself in this way. Yeah. And then the ones that are making it ugly and evil, are they the naysayers trying to steer us away, and the ones that are making it peaceful and beautiful, the ones that are telling the truth? Or could it be the other way around, whereas they're trying to tell us that it's like peaceful when it's not, and they're trying to warn us that it's going to be aggressive? It could be either way. Like for me, we're talking about movies like Prometheus being the prequel to the Alien saga. There's a connection to Sumerian mythology, which you don't really learn until you get into Prometheus. Yeah. And then Ghostbusters has a tie to Sumerians. Yeah. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things here. So I'm giving you guys a lot of movie people making lots of money. Yeah. You're getting a lot of screen time right now.
Yeah, get your popcorn, because there's a lot of amazing things that are coming out right now. And it's a good question, like why... And there's a lot of positivity, and there's the other spectrum that's kind of negative and scary,
Mm-hmm. It's conditioning, right?
Yeah, it is. There's the idea, and you may understand this coming from Freemasonry, but it's also true with the Illuminati, is that they have to tell you before they do something as well. Mm-hmm. There is a little bit of that rule that they kind of have to disclose a little bit, so they don't get caught up in karma. So they have this rule that they have to show you or tell you something before they do it. And this is where you see a lot of
they want us to engage. They want us to accept it, because if it's familiar, then it's comfortable. Yeah. But do we trust it? And then once we trust it, are they guiding us in the right direction? And who is that?
Yeah, who's controlling the puppet strings? Yeah.
Okay. So we're in our last segment, and that kind of This is perfect because I'm going to do my last segment here, and we're going to see where this goes. This is called Sorry, Not Sorry. So I'll play my little jingle here. That was the last episode that we had for season 3. Did you see any episodes of season 4 so far other than this one?
No, not yet.
Perfect, because then you're not going to know. All right, so I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to time how long it takes you to answer it. So, and then we're going to have a conversation about it. It's a social experiment. Do you accept the challenge?
I accept the challenge.
All right. So using the same logic that many people have used the Bible to interpret a reason for things, with all the knowledge and experience that you've had, what shape is the earth?
Round.
This way. What kind of round? Be specific.
Like a marble.
Okay. so the reason why I do that
blue marble.
I do that segment too because we were talking about the Bible and then how it's some people take it literally and we're missing some things and in the flat Earth movement a lot of people do reference the Bible as saying that it's the shape, that is allegedly the shape of the Earth. The reason why I add that to this segment is because we didn't get into it in this show, which is great. It's just to try to show that there are many different theories, and as far-fetched as that theory may appear to many people, it's still a group of people that strongly believe that what they're being told is a lie. So it's kind of just acknowledging the existence of another group that is looking for answers too that could work. Because my goal is to bring everyone together, so because they might have answers that we don't. And I've always say, if you want to, figure out evidence for the moon landing being fake, ask someone who believes the Earth is flat, because they spend a lot of time using that as an example to prove that NASA has been lying. But if they can prove that NASA's lying, that doesn't mean the Earth is flat. But there's just a lot of people who just don't believe that the government is telling us the whole truth and nothing but. So with this alliance, again, coming back to this new foreign partnership and this vision and this mission of actually understanding all these things, not fighting, but just bringing the pieces together that understand unity, that understand all possibilities, all walks of life. It all must be real. And here's a place so someone can come in and tell us what's real and what's not real. Creates that opportunity for unity. Yeah. So we'll end the show by I want you to tell us how people can find you on an individual level, and then how people can contribute to the AEDC movement.
Well, you can contribute to the alliance, the AEDC movement. You can send me an email at Calypso Castanares at the alliance I think it's .org. I'm not sure. They gave me an email, but you can
.org, I think.
Definitely, you can always reach out to Ryan, or you can reach out to me on my website. You can, find me on Facebook at Calypso Castanares. The Alliance is looking for people just like me, to support and just do what you do, whatever your specialty is. If you have a large platform on social media, spreading the word about future contact and the alliance and the embassy that's to be built, and we're forming this group with all this positivity. And you were talking a few minutes ago about you know, a lot of people being, you know, sketched out by the government and things like that. But what I love about the Alliance and our group and everything is that we have, you know, scientists, actual scientists, you know, Sylvain is a scientist himself, you know, and people like that coming together and with a lot of logic and science back, but as well, opening ourselves up to this, you know, amazing idea and this place that we're moving to as a species where we can actually come together and talk about things like this, given whatever background we have about future contact. Because that's where we really form unity, is not holding on to judgment, allowing ourselves to be open to different ideas and learning different things, you know. And that's why it's so important. I think I tell a lot of people, when you're going through the stages of your awakening or your spiritual progression of wherever you're coming from, is just to allow yourself to be open, to listen, to not try to just form a rigid belief, because, you know, none of us are right all the time, you know. And that's what I found a lot, and I love about our group, is that we're all very, very open, you know. And a lot of people, like Sylvain himself, is, you know, coming from a science background, he'll flat out say, I'm skeptical. And that's okay, as long as you're skeptical, but you're still open to exploring. And that is what's really fun about the New Age movement, spirituality, is that you're open and you want to explore, because each of us are special. And I tell everybody, you know, there is so much of exploration that you can do just about yourself. You know, just like when I had those contact with the Montauk beings that showed up. You know, it led me to some amazing things, although some, you know, hard things of discovery. But I was open, I'm enthusiastic, I'm passionate. And I know that whatever I learn, it's going to serve me somehow or another, you know. And I feel like if we're just open, we can do a lot of amazing things, you know.
Yep, and we do that together. Strength in numbers. Yeah.
We're going to get there. You know, it's just, you know, when you're talking about a collective level, you know, the world in general, you know, as all of us together, there are, I always tell everybody, there's multiple timelines of Earth, believe it or not. You know, that's one of those things that and scientists are even saying, you know, seeing this, there's different timelines, there's different existences, there's different dimensions, you know. They even broke into the fourth dimension with CERN, you know, which a lot of people are scary, you know, very scared about CERN and things like this. But Sylvain said it brilliantly, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but this is how we evolve as a species. We make mistakes and we make errors, but this is part of our evolution as a species. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things that, oh, damn, shouldn't have did that. That was a bad choice. But that's how we expand our consciousness as well. So if you just get rid of fear and be open, you know, we're going to get to these amazing places, but we're not going to do it perfectly like a lot of people want. But that's how we learn. We learn from the dark, we learn from the light, and we make mistakes, and we're like, damn, I ain't gonna do that again. You know, that's how we learn. So I look at my spirituality as I'm open to everything, and I try not to judge anything.
Perfect. All right. Well, that's it. We made it. We made it to the end. So thank you so much. It's a nice to meet you, and welcome to the Experience Your Support Association. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do our after